Hey everybody and welcome. Today I'm here with another abstract watercolor play inspired by this color palette, and there is a video linked up in the top right corner info box on these two pages. And today I want to make a bigger spread in my A4 Strathmore watercolor journal and just create an abstract piece. I just wanted to play and experiment a little bit. I know today is Saturday, so usually I only post on Wednesdays, and every other Saturday I post for my lovely Mixed Media Play members. But I did a lot of videos recently, and I have a lot on my phone, and I decided to throw in an extra video this Saturday for you. Maybe I can make a few more during the next month. I don't want to promise that, but it might be. So in case you are enjoying these videos and you don't want to miss a new one, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you get informed when I upload a new video. I'm playing with the same colors I've used in my last two videos, and it's a palette from Paul Rubens, and I just decided to start exploring this palette a bit more because I was not I didn't know the watercolors. I got them, I tried them, and they are really lovely, but usually with my go-to watercolors I exactly know how they behave, how they look on paper. And with these, I didn't know, so I decided to paint a little bit more with them and play with them to just find out how their properties are. I'm really playing intuitively. I just lay down the colors. I don't have any bigger plans in mind. Yeah, that's why I love making art, playing in my art journal, painting with watercolor, because it's such a fun medium that does often its own things and surprises me, and that's what I really like. I also have my core watercolor palette at the top, and I'm using only that cobalt turquoise from it because it has that high flow, and the cobalt turquoise in the Paul Rubens palette doesn't have a high flow, so I really like that property, and that's why I'm using the core color instead. But that's interesting. It depends not only on the brand, but also on the pigments that are used for certain colors if a watercolor has a high flow. And that's also something you learn about your watercolors when you play with them. I think it was, no, it was not in this painting. It will be in an upcoming video, but one of the yellows of this palette also has a really high flow, just like that brownish red I'm using here. And that's really interesting to know because then you can use that property to create certain effects. Here I'm throwing in a little bit of a Derwent Inktense pencil. Yeah, I'm playing with all kinds of materials. That's why I'm loving mixed media, because that play state, that just playing like a child, grabbing a pencil, throwing something down, makes me so happy. I don't, I think I mention that all the time, so I don't want to bore you by saying always the same stuff or explaining the same stuff. Yeah, but maybe you're new here, so it might be helpful for you. I do some mark making with the Derwent Inktense. I like to dip the tip of these pencils into water, or I really like to paint into the wetness on the page. I really like these effects. You can do this with other water-soluble pencils as well. I'm going to link up the blog post for today's spread in the video description so you can jump over and have a look at the close-up photos of this spread. And here I'm mixing some darker blue. I'm not sure about the dark blues in this set. They look quite similar on one hand. Yeah, I just didn't really know what I was doing, and I mixed together all the dark blues just to create something dark, to bring in more tonal value, to increase the range of my tones. I really like to have light midtones and dark tones. That makes a painting interesting. It increases the contrast. You can really easily test that, and I mentioned this already in a few of my videos, by just taking a photo of your painting, or probably of the swatches you've done before you made the painting, turn it into black and white on your phone, and then see if you have different shades of grays. Not only one shade of gray or two, you want to have different shades of gray. So it's going to be more interesting when you paint with the colors. If you are enjoying this video or my other videos, it would be really nice if you like the video and leave a comment underneath. Here I decided to pick my acrylic ink in white and just add in some dots into that still wet blue paint. It was not super wet. I think if it was super wet, it would have worked out a bit better, because then when you put acrylic ink into watercolor, into wet watercolor, it really spreads out. And I really like that effect. And here I'm just playing, I'm experimenting, and that's what I always like to. I want you to. I want you to play, because then when you play on your own and explore and try out different mediums, with that play you discover your own way of working, and that really adds to your creative voice, to your style, and that is what it makes look your paintings more unique, I would say. And it's also a really fun process. I think there's nothing better than playing with art materials. Um, yeah, I added this acrylic white paint. I think I will come back to it and add a bit more or let it drip. I did so many videos recently that I can't really remember what I did on which painting. That's one of my favorite patterns. I have a video out for my members talking a little bit about where to find the ideas for mark making or also for focal points. I think this pattern that is inspired. I have a book with vintage plant images, and there are also some mushrooms in there, and there are mushrooms that have kind of this texture, and that's something I always come back to. I use this texture a lot also in other paintings. In case you want to see more watercolor videos, but also more mixed media videos, you can join my monthly membership. It's $8.99 for a video every other Saturday, and there are already 60 videos up that you can watch instantly, so there is a bunch of tutorials, and I also throw in a bonus video from time to time. I would say usually it's once a month. Ah yes, here I let that color drip. I really like doing that from time to time, letting color drip, and with watercolor that works quite well. Also with acrylic ink, I think that always adds some surprising movement to an abstract painting. I let that page dry before I come back in with a second layer of watercolors. I really like to layer the watercolors. Usually I use, I would say, about 3 layers. Well, sometimes less, sometimes more. And that just adds depth to the painting, and I really like watercolors layered upon each other because they are usually quite transparent, and the color underneath is peeking through, or it's mixing in kind of visually, and that's what I really like when I play with watercolors. Whilst I was painting these crosses, I remembered that I had a bunch of lino cut stamps that I made in the past. And there are also some of these crosses, but also other images. And that brought me to the idea to add a little bit of these lino cut stamps to that spread. And I'm going to do that later in the process. I let that dry, and here I have my little tray with the lino cut stamps. Some of these have been stamp sets in the past, but I think they are not available anymore. We have one carved stamp set left in the shop, but the others are all sold out. And I'm going to stamp that circle pattern you've just seen to that page, and I'm using StazOn ink, and I try to match the colors a little bit because I don't want to introduce a new color. I decided to pick another pattern. It's a triangle pattern, and I'm using another color, and I couldn't test it because I hadn't any paper next to me, so I just used the back of the journal, and I really like the color, and it matches the turquoise quite nicely. It's a bit darker, but it's the same shade, and I'm just adding these in two areas. And next I'm adding even more mark making with the Neocolors. I just love playing, but I mention this all the time. Sometimes I have to be a bit more careful not to overwork things, not to add too much of these mark making things, because it's just such an addictive process that I sometimes just could not stop. I'm using again colors that I have already on my page. I would not introduce a new color because I then have the feeling everything is not connected. And I find for me that's quite important that everything stays harmonic. I'm using a Posca pen to draw in kind of a focal image, something that's not as abstract as the rest. So I always like this to mix that up. Um, don't know why, just because I like it. I'm using a bigger Posca marker in the same turquoise color here and just make some dots on the page. Making some pencil scribbles is also a good way to fill a light, empty space. That means it stays as it is, just with a little bit of interest, and that's something I really like to do. I'm finishing the page up with some splatters. I'm using white acrylic ink to add white splatters, and I will also use the blue watercolor towards the end and make some darker splatters. Yes, and that's all. I call my page done. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I wish you a lovely rest of the weekend, and I hope we will see us next time. Bye.